Hello everyone, I'm Joel Kahn MD. You guys know me, I'm a surgeon by trade, but my true passion is helping people just like you obtain optimum health by adopting a whole food plant-based lifestyle. Today I have the awesome pleasure of being here with Dr. Joel Kahn.
Thank you.
Blinded by the light?
No, I kind of think it's my awesome pleasure. We're standing in Maui outside and
Totally.
It's winter in Detroit, so this is pretty good.
This is January.
It's pretty
We're
nice.
Out here,
right.
Nice and humid, for sure.
The greatest threat here is the roosters that might attack us.
That is absolutely true.
Right.
And the sharks.
Okay, okay, not right now.
So anyways, Dr. Kahn is a cardiologist. He happens to be a plant-based cardiologist. And you're out here speaking for the Vegetarian Society of Hawaii this month.
Absolutely true.
Thank you for making the trek all the way out here.
Thank you. I'm also intimidated. I only have 4 letters in my last name and you have like 44. It just sounds regal, but anyway, we have our big Dutch community in Detroit area we were talking about, so power to you.
So I wanted to talk a little bit today just about the basics, heart disease, how to prevent it, how to treat it, how to reverse it, that type of thing, and then maybe we can get into some fun topics after that if we have time.
Good. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, there are people, as you know, as your community knows, that get into plant-based eating for the environment. Very important topic. We're just 2019 was the second warmest year in the history of recording the planet's temperature. It's an important reason to say I'm going to cut down or cut out animal products and put in plant products. That's a reason. People get into animal rights and animal cruelty and CAFOs, and that's an important reason. But for people that embrace this for health, as I'm sure you as a physician are very advocate for, and I am too, the heart has one of the most pressing need to consider and adopt a plant-based diet, and the greatest amount of data. I mean,
you think out of every organ, the heart is the most important when it comes to a plant-based diet?
For convincing the community out there that there is a health benefit, that there's a risk called heart disease, and there's solid data that goes back 70 years, which I'll be speaking about tonight. There's no other organ system. I'm a whole body kind of person, and we do this for our whole body. But if we were to dissect brain health and lung health and kidney health, there's actually increasing data throughout the organs of plant-based benefits and science that you and I rely on to make patient recommendations, but the heart has the most. So it's a good topic for everybody because every 40 seconds somebody has a heart attack, and we can prevent that. We can make that every 400 seconds really easy. That would be cutting out 90% of heart attacks. And that's really easy, actually.
So that's an important point. So 1 in 3 Americans dies or has heart disease. It's a really common thing. It's the #1 killer of all Americans. Is it in the world?
It varies around the world, and there are a lot of segments now where cancer is a little more common. Canada, but they're abundant. It's about 650,000 deaths due to cardiovascular disease in the United States, about 600,000 from cancer. What's the #3 cause of death in the United States? Hospital errors. That's right. That's why we teach people to be healthy, so you have necessary surgery, but you avoid, like a plague, getting in the hospital if you can.
Correct.
Because you get the wrong antibiotic or the wrong blood transfusion or the wrong operation or a bed sore or sepsis. So that's a remarkably scary statistic. And I teach my patients it's a good reason, to make the health moves, as young in life as possible, so that you walk in a hospital to visit a relative, hopefully not, but you do, but not for your own health crises.
That's brilliant. Wow. So heart disease for you is kind of your passion. That's what you treat. You've been plant-based for a long time?
Yeah, over 40 years. Long time. 18 years old.
So it started out ethical, or?
No, it started out practical. To be very honest, I'll talk about it tonight. I grew up in a household in Detroit where we kept kosher dietary laws. We didn't mix milk and meat. We didn't eat pork. It was just an important part of my upbringing, and I walked into the dormitory in Ann Arbor. I had very little options that allowed me to honor that, and there was an amazing salad bar. And literally, I felt great doing that the first couple of weeks. My girlfriend, who's been my wife for 38 years, felt great. And we never turned back. There was no reason to turn back. We missed nothing. My parents had gone to the Kahn Center and had already transitioned a lot of the cooking in their home. So we quickly got surrounded by an easy way to sustain ourselves. A lot of Indian restaurants, Asian restaurants in Ann Arbor. And then boom, I'm in medical school and I'm actually learning this stuff. I read John Robbins' book, Diet for a New America, which was in the 80s, early 80s, right when it came out. a lot of us had a big impact from that book. So it wasn't a tree-hugging, hippie, beatnik kind of thing. It was, I was on my path to becoming a medical doctor. I had adopted a diet, and then it just turns out cardiology being that focus of the early research, for sure, of the health benefits. I've been teaching my patients about avoiding surgery, bypass stents since 1990, even though I was a specialist in stent therapy of heart disease.
Sure.
So kind of fun, kind of a hybrid practice right from the beginning.
Right, right. So summarize in a couple minutes how heart disease can be prevented just by food.
So number one, and this is I call my practice high tech, high touch. I mean, I spend a lot of time with people, teach them how to make a smoothie, teach them the importance of eating a giant salad, but I'm going to test the heck out of them, not like doctors did in the 1970s, which is basically how it's done now in 2020. Angiogram, I'm not even talking blood work. I mean, the patients I see that even have gone for expensive executive physicals, Cleveland Clinic, Mayo Clinic, or their local physician, all good people. They're getting the basic labs you've seen 1,000 times. Yet, we can do a lot of blood work. My favorite topic is something called lipoprotein A. It's a form of cholesterol. It's genetic. 1 out of every 4 people inherit it. The blood test costs $30. If you have that inheritance, doesn't mean you're necessarily going to get cardiovascular disease earlier in life, but it definitely puts you at significant risk. So I will go through some of that stuff, but really there is the lifestyle of preventing a heart attack, and this has been well studied both at Harvard School of Public Health and a number of centers like Karolinska Institute in Sweden and Stockholm. But if you will do 5 or 6 things as early in life as possible, you cut your heart attack risk down by 85 to 90%. That's how you go from a heart attack every 40 seconds to one every 400 seconds. So you obviously don't smoke. We would have come out of that one for sure.
Yep.
You try and get 30 minutes a day of fitness, and I'm not randomly picking these. These were in the studies built in.
So not to interrupt, but 30 minutes a day of vigorous or moderate or...
The American Heart Association says, that was a bumbling statement there, 22 minutes a day of vigorous physical exercise, 30 minutes a day of moderate. And, you want to exercise to the point you are able to carry on a conversation, but it's a bit of a struggle because you're working that hard. That's one way to judge it.
Yeah.
Not to the point, and certainly if somebody's not in good shape, to push it to the point where they're breathless consistently. But you want to get in that 30 minutes a day. That'd be the second one. No smoking. Regular fitness. It can be yard work. It could be dancing. It could be any other form of exercise you like that's within your physical capabilities. You want to try and stay trim and thin, and that is a tough one. God knows you know it and I know it.
Yeah.
75% of Americans are overweight or obese, but the studies indicate when you can keep your BMI down, you do reduce your heart attack risk.
Right.
You want to eat better than average, and most of the studies that I'm referring to are 5 or more servings of fruit and vegetables a day as a definition. Doesn't mean a complete commitment to plant-based eating, but it's close. You want to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. That's actually from a study in the Netherlands called the Morgan study, and that's kind of new on the radar. And the last one's controversial, but when these studies analyze all the data they have and look who avoided a heart attack over the years, having a little alcohol during the week, but I stress a little, is actually an advantage versus excessive or none. Sure. So, a drink a day at the maximum. But people that do all those 6 things I just mentioned in large studies involving tens of thousands of people have 85% less heart attacks than those that just lead a life without consideration or mindfulness about that risk for the #1 killer of men and women. There was in the media this week, a lot of people remember the show Glee. It was very popular on TV, and a 56-year-old actress who had been, I think, one of the school teachers on that show had 2 visits to the doctor, got blown off, it's heartburn, it's aching. The 3rd visit was a heart attack, and she ended up getting a couple stents, and she'll be okay. But, that's exactly like the focus. What if she had been told 10 years earlier there was this preventive lifestyle? Some people will embrace it, and some people won't. That's human nature.
For sure.
So that's the prevention of heart disease. A little better labs than normal, and knowledge that there's a lifestyle centering around plant-based eating and other features. It's not solely that. And I throw in, I actually call it the next step, early detection. Mammograms, colonoscopy, we do a lot, PSAs, we do a lot of things to identify significant risk early. We do really nothing for heart disease. So I have embraced for the past 20 years, along with many vascular specialists, cardiologists and such, a CT scan called a heart calcium CT scan. I don't own the scanner. You probably want to do it at a major or medium-sized hospital so you have a fairly new CT scanner, but it's a 10-second test where you just lie in a CT scanner, hold your breath, you get the result within a day. You want to see that your heart arteries are youthful and non-calcified. That's called a calcium score 0. And you don't want to find out, but you probably should know, if it's not the case, that your heart arteries are getting silently aged, deteriorating, calcified, and you may get a number back 100 or 200 or 600 or 1200.
Sure.
It's a quantitative way to say, this is a real risk to people, and I just found out I'm part of that risk, and I need to really embrace lifestyle and exercise the whole gamut. So you throw that on top of lifestyle, and we can really make heart attacks very rare. Really, really can.
So one of the questions I get a lot when discussing the coronary artery calcium score is radiation. Oh, is this a big deal? Is the radiation from the CT scan going to hurt me? But my understanding is it's pretty low dose.
Well, number one, it's a good point. And when you do it infrequently, and and I've been involved in ordering calcium CT scans for about 20 years. I worked thousands and thousands. If it's abnormal, I basically never repeat it. I mean, if it comes back and it identifies mild, moderate, or severe, silent, unknown heart disease, I know what I need to do. You may need more intensive medical therapy. You clearly need more intensive lifestyle therapy. You need the advanced blood work, and I need to follow you. And then the last thing I tell people, you've just had a test that reveals you have silent atherosclerosis. If there's ever that day that you think it's bad heartburn, you think you're just having some kind of chest congestion, but it feels like nothing you've ever had before, remember, go to the emergency room quicker than somebody who has no advanced knowledge. You've got a heads up.
That's a really good point.
A really good point. Now, if somebody comes back a perfect 0, you could argue 7 to 10 years later.
Okay.
The amount of radiation is equivalent or a little less than a mammogram. It's usually as judged by a radiation dose,
a good comparison.
1 millisievert. Which,
and we're doing mammograms
every couple of years, once a year, exactly, over and over.
Yep.
So I'm not too concerned that when you take this enormous burden of premature heart deaths and you take a very infrequent exposure. I'd like to have a test that didn't involve radiation. There is a way to do it by imaging the carotid arteries that may be as valuable, but the type that I do in my office is not widely available. It's a little more expensive. You can do this calcium CT scan in a lot of hospitals for $75. You're probably going to pay out of pocket.
Yep.
But for the cost of a family dinner for 4, you have identified, really looking at the future, where you stand, and you got to work a little harder if it's not normal.
Right. So knowledge is power. Knowing whether you have heart disease or not is important. I wanted to go back to one thing that you had said when you were talking about fruits and vegetables, 5 servings a day. Only 3% of the population.
Isn't that crazy?
3% of all Americans get that many fruits and vegetables a day, so easy fix. I mean, come on.
And in children, it may be less. I know there are statistics that when you look at what the things I mentioned, how many people smoke, it's about 15 to 20% of the population. How many people get 30 minutes a day of exercise? It's about 50% of the population.
Really?
But how many?
Higher than I would have thought.
Yeah, but how many people eat the way these studies indicate will, add to the prevention of heart disease? It's under 5%, and it's just an awful, awful, scary number for cancer prevention, for
Obesity,
everything. Yeah, total body. That's where the body's really unified in the data. Yeah, good point.
So let's move on and talk a little bit about treatment.
Sure.
Can we touch on the Ornish diet, all of that, and is it still relevant, as you were alluding to?
It's actually, I'm glad you just used that word, it's way more relevant than ever. And why do I say that? Why is it more important to understand the power, the scientific proof that plant-based diets favor the fact that you either won't develop heart disease or you can actually stabilize it and even potentially reverse it? Well, what has the industry of cardiology developed? We do a lot of heart catheterizations, my specialty.
Stents.
We place a lot of stents, with my specialty, and we refer a lot of people to cardiovascular surgeons for open heart bypass surgery. Not my specialty, but still something I've done hundreds and hundreds of times. And there certainly has developed a whole industry to try and help people lead good lives and long lives. But it also is the basis for the largest profit margin for hospitals.
Yeah.
It supports many, many jobs and many, many people. It's not an industry that it's going to go down and shrink very quickly or very easily. Why do I say that? Because in November 2019, there was announced the results of the largest, most expensive cardiac trial in the history of cardiology, called the ISCHEMIA Trial. And basically, United States and many other centers around the world, 5,179 people, very bad blockage, very abnormal stress tests, most of them having that concerning symptom we call angina. That just knee-jerk reflex would have gone for catheterization, stent, and bypass based on about 30 years of tradition, history, referral patterns, you know, the way we train young cardiologist fellows. But they entered a study willingly where half of them got proper medication. We don't throw the pills away in those kind of people, but they got dietary information, they got exercise information, and were watched. The other half went right to the catheterization, the stent, and the bypass surgery, depending on which of those two modalities they needed. And this really pitted the data we have. You know, what they were instructed to do wasn't as advanced as the Ornish data set, but they were instructed on the importance of lifestyle and medication versus major surgery. At the end of 3.3 years involving all these people, there was no difference in outcome. Being admitted to the hospital, having a heart attack, having a stroke, being alive, there was no difference. In fact, in the first year, there was more risk if you accepted and were in the arm that got stents and bypass, because things happen. And some of these things that happen are called operative mortality, operative fatalities. So that has, you know, to some of us in the preventive world, and I used to be in the interventional world, so I've kind of shifted hats willingly and happily. I said, you know, more than ever, we need to embrace and understand the science of preventive cardiology using food and all, and that's where you go back to, you know, 1990. So 30 years later, Dr. Dean Ornish, still, I would call him a very young and vibrant physician in Sausalito, California, San Francisco, published a paper that showed if you have badly clogged heart arteries and you adopted some yoga like your kind husband teaches, and some meditation, which your husband probably teaches, probably you practice, some fitness, and a plant diet, which was whole food. 30 years ago, we didn't know much about junk vegan food. It's much more a problem now. That you could actually document the stabilization and the reversal of plaque in heart arteries. Unbelievably phenomenal data, followed up 1998 with a second aspect of his study. And then the numbers that he entered into his database got larger and larger. So it took 20 years, but in 2010, a decade ago now, the government, Medicare and Medicaid, authorized payment. You're told you have bad blockage, you're told you have angina, you can get into a program that's available even in Hawaii called an Ornish, intensive cardiac rehab program, and you can work to reverse your heart disease and your insurance company will pay for it. Yep. Unbelievable. And now we may have a much bigger pool that if we do what the science says we should do, hold off on surgery, hold off on stenting. So I think it's more important than ever that people understand this isn't really old data. It's very important data that in my own clinic, I'll just say, this isn't historical. I mean, I can detect and reverse heart disease using lifestyle and a plant-based diet, and I can prove it, and I will show it. I'll show some slides of it tonight in my talk. And we need it because we are emboldened. I tell you, you can imagine this. Patient comes to see me and says, hey doc, I'm scheduled for bypass surgery next Tuesday. I hear you do second opinion consults. Do you think I can avoid bypass? Well, man, you're taking a person's life, plus you're taking every other cardiologist and cardiac surgeon in the city and pitting yourself against them to do the right thing. Not all cardiologists are ready to do that. They've not seen a patient that they really believe has done well by refusing, you know, what's recommended, a stent or bypass. But we need to instruct the generation that, one, it's within what we call the standard of care. You're not going to get sued by recommending therapy that's right out of a major research trial and has shown to have incredible power. And but it does, as I said, it really impacts careers, finances, hospital budgets, hospital volume. It's not going to change quickly.
True. Change does come slow.
Well, when it's a pocketbook and a hospital administrator, it comes real slow.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
But, you know, we still have to do the right thing for our patients, and I know you do that, and that's what I do. So Dr. Dean Ornish, you know, demonstrated in studies that, you know, a few people criticized him because initially the numbers were a little low and such, but to his credit, as the numbers kept increasing, the data that he submitted to Medicare was over 3,000 patients, so getting to be sizable.
Yes.
Took a while to get those numbers. And it's not just his data. There's a Cleveland Clinic physician, Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, who, with a little less funding and a little less randomization, still observed the same phenomenon. But it's not widely accepted. That is still the impediment in cardiology. The majority of cardiologists might not even know who Dr. Dean Ornish and Dr. Esselstyn are, don't know of their data. And, you know, that's why I'm willing and always happy to educate physicians or the public that this is really, really cool stuff and powerful.
It is. It's amazing stuff.
Well, you know, it makes sense as you think about it. If smoking, sedentary lifestyle, and poor diet brought on the disease, and understanding that maybe 20% of heart disease is on a genetic basis, that's a reasonable number, 80% is lifestyle. Why isn't it possible if you seriously change, give up smoking, start exercising, and change your diet to a artery-friendly version, why wouldn't it be possible to stop and even reverse the process? It does make a lot of sense.
It does, it does. And reflecting back on my medical school education, I think about the teaching that I had regarding diet for any disease, not just heart disease. What did I have? And it wasn't much, which I think is a travesty. I know that's changing, but it's very slow. Very slow. If somebody watching this video has heart disease or wants to make a change for whatever reason, what are your go-to resources?
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you asked that. So I love videos because I can just jot down on a little, I write it on a prescription pad. It seems to carry a little extra weight. You know, in particular if they have Netflix nowadays. I still have DVDs in my office, but watch Forks Over Knives. There's one called What the Health. And then 2019 we got a movie that has a lot of medical background in it called Game Changers. And if they don't know about the CT scan, there's a really cool documentary called The Widowmaker Movie. So if they watch 1, 2, or all 4, and I really encourage them to watch with a spouse, a significant other. Forks Over Knives, easily watch it with a family. It can make a big impact. And you know, I have seen dozens, hundreds of cases where people had no clue that type 2 diabetes and obesity and blood pressure and heart disease might be halted and even reversed by lifestyle change, and like they feel like a burden's been lifted from them, and maybe I can get off a pill, or maybe I can feel better. And you know, I always encourage them to work with their primary care doc before they start changing their medications. But it is real, it can happen. And then, I mean, I like books. Not everybody will read a book. I don't like thick books. So I have dozens of copies of Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn's book, Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. It's a strict book that some people withdraw from and say, whoa, that's a tough diet. I want them to know, because you know, it's actually pretty simple, it's easy, and the recipes are phenomenal. I want them to feel that full potential for them. And then, you know, a lot of them embrace it and say, no big deal. And those that don't, we can pull back a little bit and give them a little more room to make that change. My last book, I've written 5, soon to be 6, my last book called The Plant-Based Solution, goes through not just heart disease, but kidney disease, brain disease, connective tissue disease, and on, thyroid disease. It's not a bad resource at all. Dr. Ornish has a thick book, again, if somebody's looking, called Undo It, kind of early 2019. And it adds in a lot of his experience with meditation and yoga and cooking and his really phenomenal experience, and it's a great resource. So we don't have a lack of great resources, and that's about as much as. I will say one other, a wonderful physician you know, and I know, Dr. Neil Barnard, has a little book, and I like little books, called The Vegan Starter Book, and it came out about 6 months ago. And the feedback I'm getting from patients, again, I have many copies in my office, I want to make it really easy, I want you to go home and read this book, is they're liking it, it's quick, and they really like the recipes again. And you know, that's, you know, making the right thing to do, the simple thing to do is, you know, not too intimidating, give a book this big or too much homework. But I call it homework and write it on the prescription pad, and they respond very positively.
That's great. I also would add things like support groups are huge. Try not to do it yourself. See if you can find a buddy to kind of keep you accountable, and that helps big time.
And I don't know if you know this, I'll say this on your channel because maybe somebody out there will do this, but exactly 6 years ago, a patient in Detroit, not my patient, called me and said, my name is Paul Chatlin, he doesn't mind me using it, I have heart disease, I was supposed to have bypass, I learned about Dr. Esselstyn, I changed my diet 6 months ago, I lost weight, blood pressure, cholesterol, everything improved, in fact my chest pain went away, I never had the surgery they recommended. He was actually lying in the Cleveland Clinic a day before his heart surgery.
Oh, wow.
But he said to me, I don't know anybody else doing this. I asked around, and it seems like your practice and concentrates on lifestyle cardiology. can we get 20 people together once in a while? Out of that phone call and then a cup of tea, we have a group in Detroit with 7,000 members now out of that one phone call. He started the group with me. Yep. He just ran with it. And it provides people a welcome place to hear a lecture by Michael Greger and Dr. Neil Bernard. You next, if you want to come to Detroit with, you know, with your sweat clothes, exactly. And then it gives them an opportunity to do cooking classes and all the rest. But you're right, a community, whether it's a digital community like a Forks Over Knives Facebook users group, or a real live community is so helpful, because you'll get pushback. Unfortunately, you get pushback from your primary care doctor a lot. No, keto is popular, throw some meat back, and the calcium CT is not important, and a lot of pushback from the medical community, which is unfortunate because people are looking for, you know, solutions other than another pill and another pill.
I will say things are changing. So I'm with Kaiser, and in my organization, I've actually given lectures to my colleagues here, and we've talked about, you know, the data behind plant-based diet, behind lifestyle medicine in general. We've talked about ACLM and all of the stuff that they do, so it's very cool. Change is coming. Yeah,
no, Kaiser is, I've actually said, I want to go back, I talked about this ISCHEMIA trial. I think Kaiser's the best system to look at how do we implement such an important, large, and definitive study. And Kaiser implementing mandatory second opinions and lifestyle education before going on to stents and bypass could really be a game changer, the second time we've used that term. But you have to kind of do it in a insurance system that's kind of closed and controlled.
Kaiser, we already have a program. It's called HALT. You're aware of that? So and it's mainly right now for diabetes and some cardiac factors. But you're right. If we could do a mandatory, kind of like before bariatric surgery, where you have to have the mandatory lifestyle dietary stuff, that might be a really very. I love your idea. We should run with it. I'm gonna channel my friends on that one for sure.
Good.
With the few minutes that we have left, I know you're super busy. We were talking about this a little before the interview, and I think it's super fun. Can you tell me what you do for exercise? What's like the fun hacks and the things that you do that are really fun?
And hack is an important word because, you know, and some of the listeners know the word biohack, or how to test and maybe improve your own fitness or brain health or body weight or energy level or sleep. Biohacking is kind of a hot trend right now, and some of it's in the woo and some of it's real, using you know, sleep rings, the Oura ring, and you're going right there. Good. I have it at night, but I left it at home. So I had a little incident about 6 months ago at actually a medical meeting, PCRM.org's annual meeting, and I'm riding an escalator and I broke my foot. Actually, the escalator bit into my shoe, and within about 2 seconds, my right leg is up here and my body's down there, and broke my foot. So I was previously using ellipticals and treadmills and spin classes and all. So I was looking for something that was a little different so that I could keep working out and gaining fitness, around that time, I ran into a lot of data about red light therapy called photobiomodulation, and realized that there were hundreds and hundreds of articles that suggested it actually helped deal with cellulite, body fat, skin, you know, aging, as well as some interesting data on autoimmune and thyroid. But kind of ran into that and said, that's pretty cool. I don't want to gain weight during this like more inactive period of my life. So we used to be $25,000. Now for about $700, you can get this long panel that bathes your body in red light. It's not UV light. It's not tanning light. It's not skin cancer light. I had always loved in my health club this little thing called the Power Plate Whole Body Vibration, which shakes the heck out of you. And you can just stand there, or you can do squats, or you can do barbells on it, and read about it. And actually there's data that it accelerates bone healing and actually bone density. Thought that was cool. There was one in my gym, but I ended up getting one at home. And I had weights. So I found out, but by standing on my power plate in front of my red light, either doing squats or doing weights, or even now a yoga flow on it, I didn't actually put much pressure at all on my foot. And it healed so fast. My foot specialist was really amazed. I didn't have surgery. I didn't use crutches. I didn't use one of those little wheeling things that people have when they tear up their Achilles. And I just fell in love with this, like some people call this stacked fitness, where you're doing more than one thing that benefits you at the same time. And you can hear on a lot of podcasts some of the hackers talking about stacked fitness. If I could jump into an ice tank all at the same time, I'd add that in too, because more and more into like hot and cold showers, and I've been in some seriously painful ice tanks after doing some breathing. So that is my current and unusual, and although I've always loved yoga and hot classes and long classes, I do a flow that you are familiar with, and I'm sure your husband is, the 5 Tibetans. It's a classic, easy to do, friendly in a hotel room, friendly in a bedroom. You don't have to necessarily go to a yoga center to do it. I actually figured out how to do it on this vibrational power plate, so the moves are there. And it's
That's awesome.
I'm hooked. It's like the most interesting 15, 20 minutes, and then I'll go do something else, a rebounder now that my foot's all better, or it could be an elliptical, it could be some weights. So
cool.
Kind of an unusual little workout.
Yeah. And then I understand when you're at work, you have a treadmill desk or a standing desk?
A standing desk.
Okay.
I haven't moved to a treadmill desk, which are out there and kind of made famous by a Mayo physician, James Levine, who realized that some of the weight challenge that Americans are having is, obviously sedentary, and he coined the term NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, that you can actually burn 100 calories a day, not 1,000, by shaking your legs, by standing at the back of the room during a conference, by walking a treadmill a mile an hour while you're taking a phone call, by standing at a desk. And he really is credited with inventing the treadmill desk and later the standing desk. So I'm a big proponent, maybe 15, 20 minutes an hour. I have a lot of patients love that I'm standing during their 30-minute visit, so they stand with me too.
Cool.
They kind of get it. I have a podcast I do once a week, and it's usually from the standing desk of the Kahn Center for Cardiac Longevity, and they just kind of like that. And I like it too. It's really feels good in my back. I can't do it I can't do it all day long. You'll develop varicose veins or feet problems, but 10, 15 minutes an hour, it's really a good activity.
I have do you know what a Bosu ball is?
Yeah, sure.
I have one of those and then a standing desk. Okay. So it's really tall, but you work on your balance while you're doing it, which I like, but it's good. Yeah. Good. Very cool. Well, Dr. Kahn, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time to let me have a talk with you.
I think we're out of the doldrums, aren't we?
We're out of the doldrums.
Yeah, we're in the healthy lane of life.
So one last question for you. Can people living anywhere kind of consult with you remotely, or is that not an option? Oh. Okay.
Yeah, it's KahnLongevityCenter.com would be my clinic website. There's issues that come up with that, but I get calls from all over the world. And somebody last week from Bogota, Colombia. It actually, when you're, I can't do a heart catheterization remotely, but talking about diet, talking about fitness, suggesting they get some extra lab work in their hometown, can be done very efficiently in that manner.
Very cool.
Lifestyle medicine is very amenable to telemedicine.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. You want to show us some real support, subscribe. I want to know what you thought of this video, so comment below and we'll chat about what your thoughts were. Let me know what topics you want to hear about next time.
Let's talk about olive oil next time.
Let's do it. Olive oil and omega-3 supplementation.
Okay.
We're on it. All right, everybody. Until next time. Aloha.
Aloha.
Thank you, brilliant Dr. Kahn.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I really do appreciate it.
No problem.
That was fun.
I know. I feel like we gotta, roast some vegan weenies and make some s'mores with the next. I do it now. Really weird. I do the 5 Tibetans on a power plate.
A power plate.
You don't know power plate? Whole body
you
vibration.
Do that?
I do the yoga on a power plate.
What?
Oh, there's good data. There's really good peer-reviewed data for us, for bone density, for HRV, there's a few things that.
How do you do yoga on the power plate?
You should see me. Well, you literally.
There we go. Namaste.